next, it's Benjamin. Benjamin, what have you got for us today?
Well, tonight I'm discussing the chairman of NatWest. You remember the guy, the one that defended Dame Alison Rose, against Nigel Farage in the debanking scandal. Well, Sir Howard Davies is back in the news and back putting his foot in it. He was on the BBC Radio 4 Today programme the other day when he said that it's really not that difficult to buy a house. Now, I was pretty shocked by that, given that I live in the real world and don't earn £750,000 for a retirement gig as Sir Howard Davies does. Now, I've had run-ins with Howard Davies before. When I was an undergraduate at the London School of Economics, I held a candlelit vigil for him as he left after he was sacked for taking £1.5 million from the Gaddafi family. You'd think that would say something about his judgment, but no. So Howard Davies' great advantage in life is that he was born in the 1950s. Because when he was getting on the housing ladder, the average home in this country cost 4 times the average income. So if he had a wife at the time, that's a pretty good deal. How much do you think it is today? Well, in most of the country, it's 8 or 9 times the average income for a house. In a city like London, it's 12 times the average salary. But to put that in context, it is as difficult now for the average earner to buy a house as it was in the 1870s. That is how far back we've got. And yet you still hear people, old boomers, rich boomers like Sir Howard Davies, saying that if only you forfeited that Netflix account or you didn't have that cheeky latte, then you'd be on the housing ladder. The truth is that our housing market is totally broken. We need to build millions more houses. People need to accept that their house price can't go up 300% as it has in the last 20 years. And I'm sorry, but if you're 80 and have a 5-bedroom home, you need to downsize. Frankly, if you're not willing to do that, and if Howard Davies doesn't understand that, then he shouldn't be running a bank at all. Now, Belinda...
Oh, my gosh, Benjamin.
You live in a very fancy house. What do you make of this?
I think you need to stop this relentless attack on old people who've worked hard their whole lives under the laws they were given. It's not their fault they were able to buy a house. It's just generational luck. And I tell you what, not every generation...
It's not luck, it's a fix.
Not every generation has this kind of luck. In fact, most generations have to adapt to the time they're born in. I would not have liked to have been an 18-year-old in 1914 or 1939. That sucked for teenagers.
Belinda, it's not been this bad since 1870.
I'm just saying, young people, I'm really sorry, you are right, but it's time to adapt. And you can still buy properties, just not the fancy pants London ones that you all want as your first property.
So what you should do is you should not have a job, but have a flat in the middle of nowhere.
No, but there are so many places around the country, beautiful coastal places.
Why don't you live there, then?
Like Scarborough. I actually would be very happy to live there if it was the first house I could get on the property ladder and then redo it up, sell it on, make a little profit. You know, you can get a 3-bedroom house in Shildon in County Durham for £80,000. You can get a 3-bedroom house in Scarborough for £100,000. Scarborough is stunning.
Belinda, just to give some context to that comment, only 5% of the country has an average house price of £100,000 or lower. So this is a tiny part of the world. And if everyone on London salaries, decent London salaries that can't buy here, were to buy in those places, the people that live in Scarborough wouldn't be able to buy them.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that people need to... It sucks, but people need to adapt and start buying property in cheaper areas.
Do you know what, as well, though? He's saying, you know, if everyone moved up to the northeast, for example, the house prices would end up going up. If we shipped half the bloody third world to this country, the house prices would go up, and that's exactly what he wants to happen.
Just to be clear, I'm never going to buy a home in the northeast because I don't want to be that close to you.
Well,
you've got to stop being obsessed with London.
I agree with Belinda. I think you have a horrible vendetta against old people. I think you actually have some callous bone in your body that really, really hates old people, and I find it, frankly, staggering and really concerning.
He's trying to shock them.
We have a generation of people who think that their home going from being worth 100,000 to £1 million was an accomplishment. It wasn't. It was luck. And you have to account for the fact that when you're getting those very expensive houses and you have all that money that you can maybe pass on, it is at the consequence of other people.
Politics of envy. How left?
Yeah, well, yes.
But you're not engaging with the point that Benjamin is making.
I will. There were fewer mortgage products, right, back in 1979 when these mortgages were taken out that you speak of. There were obviously massive variations in salaries. They certainly, even adjusted for inflation, they weren't on salaries that we enjoy today.
But that's what I said. In that point in the 70s, it was 4 times the average salary. Today, it's between 8 and 12 times.
Yeah.
There you go. That is clearly a system that is making it harder for hard-working people to get security.
This country was a socialist basket case in the 70s. People weren't living in this land of milk and able to... Well, they had a house, but they had to work for it. You make it sound like it just fell into their laps. That they interest rates, Benjamin, you talk about those. Interest rates were actually 17% when Margaret Thatcher took over in 1979. Imagine taking out a mortgage with a 17% interest rate.
We have a housing shortage of about 4 million in this country.
Yes, because of you and Benjamin and your penchant of mass migration.
Don't talk about your migrant nonsense, OK? Let's talk about what the problem is in this country. We have had too much immigration. We've not built the infrastructure to keep up with it. We have a planning system which means we don't get anything built that we need in this country, whether that's railways, whether or not that's housing. We have the scourge of NIMBYism, mostly propagated by boomers, stopping anything from being built. So instead of having a go at Benjamin for having a vendetta against older people, why don't we actually engage with the fundamental issues which are stopping us building the infrastructure that we need?
But
so
Albie, listen, Albie, you can't ignore the fact that this country's population has gone up by millions.
Did I not mention immigration in my argument?
Yes, but it is an absolutely massive factor when we're talking about affordability of cities. I mean, Sadiq Khan built 2 homes between April and June last year.
Not enough.
2 affordable homes. And so we have got a problem with the planning system, but we also have a problem with politicians looking at the short term, always looking at their next election cycle and not actually caring about the people who need to buy houses who aren't going to vote for them. And the Tories are actually pretty bad at this. They're only worrying about building homes in rural areas to suit their voters. And actually what we need to be doing is building affordable homes in cities and not prioritising them for asylum seekers and immigrants. We need to be prioritising for people who live in this country and are citizens.
Young people need to stop voting for parties that want to open our borders and support hyper-mass immigration if they want to get on the housing ladder. They need to take
That's not why we have a housing
responsibility.
We've built half as many houses in the last 30 years as France has. We have not built enough, and we've also seen an explosion in people buying second homes,
to be covered
buying
in concrete.
investment homes.
Thank you, Benjamin.
A house should not be your pension, it should be somewhere for people to live. And that's been a massive effect on the supply and demand of our houses in the last 20 years.